go ahead and start. Let's see. All right. So just briefly, how I would like this to go is I'm just going to touch on a few different topics around PPP, around the CARES Act in general. There is another one thing that I've been doing as I make my rounds in the community is touching base on different grants that are available to Chicagoland businesses. So I'll touch a little bit on that as well. At the end, we'll talk briefly about the difference that FAB has in terms of banking for our business clients. And then at the end, I'll open that up. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me at that point, okay? So first things first, we'll be speaking about the CARES Act. So the CARES Act did a lot of things for us on a personal side, right? We saw stimulus checks go out for $1,200 and $600. We saw unemployment being extended. We saw a lot of different funding relief in terms of like student loans, mortgages, things like that. But what we're really focusing on here is what did the CARES Act do for businesses? And that came down to really three things: the Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and really just SBA loans in general. So I'll touch base on that. We'll also talk about the different types of qualifications, the application process, the loan terms, whether it's forgivable, whether you have to repay it, and so forth. So that being said, the first one is the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, this is really the bulk of what the CARES Act does for businesses, right? It's based on payroll and losses that you have generated from 2019 to 2020. There are two rounds. The first round applies to any business who has not previously applied for the PPP program before. It provides you a funding of up to 2.5% of your average monthly payroll costs in comparison from 2019 to 2020. The maximum loan amount that you can get for that is going to be $2 million. The unique thing about this is that it is a forgivable loan. And by forgivable, I mean the process works by going to a local branch that is a PPP provider. We will collect your documentation for you. We will send you a link. It's actually all electronic now. Once we do the actual underwriting at the branch, we send it off to the SBA. SBA assigns it a loan, they fund it, they send it to us, and then we provide you with those funds. What we ask you to do in the meantime is that you continue to collect your payroll costs and keep receipts of what you're using the funds for. And then that way, when the forgiving process starts, we submit that and the SBA will actually credit us back the loan amount. And so your loan is forgiven. What ended up happening with this latest passage of the CARES Act is that they opened up a second round. And the second round really allows for businesses to get either the same amount that they applied for last time or a larger amount based on an additional 25% reduction in their operating expenses, in their gross receipts. So that's really the bulk of the PPP program. Your second option is the Economic Injury Disaster Loans. They're called EIDL for short. How those work is it is an actual loan. The interest rate is 3.25% for a regular business. And it is based on lost revenue as well. The only difference is that dollar amount isn't forgivable. It is a physical loan that you will need to repay back over time. There were two other programs that came with that. One was the EIDL Advance, which really just gave you up to $10,000. And then there was the EIDL targeted advance, which was pretty similar to the regular advance, but it was geared towards low income communities. The EIDL advance program is no longer available, just only the EIDL loan itself. For EIDL loans, you will go specifically through the SBA. So you will actually go to their website and apply. All right. We have been fielding a lot of calls lately about new changes to the SBA program, specifically around PPP. Many of you have heard that President Biden recently enacted a 14-day exclusion period. A lot of businesses have heard that, and they believe that they cannot apply throughout that 14-day period. So I just want to touch base on what that means. The 14-day exclusion period is really meant to prioritize the smallest of businesses, right? The ones that are really hinging on just a few employees to run their business. So it gives a preference to businesses that have less than 20 employees. And for those 14 days, the SBA will underwrite only those. Larger businesses can still apply. You can still submit an application for PPP, but it won't be processed until after that 14-day period. That 14-day period began on February 24th, and it actually ends today. If you had submitted an application prior to that 14-day period and you were a larger business, you have more than 20 employees, it's still being reviewed. It was only during this 14-day period that new applications for those larger businesses weren't being accepted. Before I go on, anyone have any questions? No? Okay. All right, perfect. Another recent change that came out was meant to...
Sorry, Kyle. I do have a question. Sorry I missed the introduction, everybody. But I heard that the PPP loans are starting to open up to businesses with no employees with changed restrictions. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yes. Yep. I'm actually going to touch base on that right now.
Okay.
Yes. So this most recent change was designed to make the program more widely available to sole proprietors, independent contractors, and people who are just generally self-employed. How that will work is if you're a sole proprietorship, you will be still comparing your income from 2019 to 2020. Basically, what you'll be doing is you'll be supplying bank statements, and you will do your comparison through there. Most of the time, we will transpose that onto an Excel sheet, and then showing the difference between 2019, 2020. You'll calculate what the dollar amount of the difference was, and then the percentage, and then you'll sign it, and you'll submit that instead of a Schedule C or a W-3 like a larger organization would do. Does that help, or do you have another question regarding that?
So do we have to have our tax returns ready for 2020 then?
For the sole proprietor, you're going to use your 2019 taxes,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're going to need to supply your bank statements.
Bank statements, okay.
Yeah, and you're going to pick a particular quarter that you want to compare. So let's say you want to use Q2 of 2020, right? Because that's when a lot of the mask mandates went in place, the restrictions on occupancy, things like that. That's when you really took a hit. So you would compare your statements from April, May, and June of 2020 to April, May, and June of 2019.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kyle, there's another question here in the chat. Do you know if you can apply for PPP if you have been receiving PUA benefits? I don't know what that is, so.
Can the person who submitted the question clarify what they mean by PUA?
Hi, this is Julie.
Julie.
PUA is the pandemic unemployment that you could receive for self-employed people who were able to get that this past year. And so I've gotten different opinions whether you can also receive that and also the PPP. And it's, some people say, well, this sounds like it's double dipping, but I don't know. And so I was wondering about that.
Sure. No, that's a good question, Julie. This change actually just came out, so I'm not sure. I haven't encountered that question yet, but I do have an associate that works directly with the SBA. So I will ask that question today, and then I will actually get back to you on that.
Yeah, well, and also though now the state of Illinois, I saw this in the Friday paper that I don't believe they're extending PUA benefits because Illinois' unemployment rate has gone down. So even though it's a federal change that may be coming along soon, which would be beneficial, they may not be extending it. In fact, they're going back and telling people who received the PUA that they may not have qualified and they have to apply for a waiver so they don't have to pay back. It's gotten really complicated through IDES, Illinois Department of Employment Security. It's gotten very complicated.
Okay. So are you an independent contractor?
Yeah, I'm self-employed. I own my own agency. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's in the travel industry. So most people know that the travel industry was pretty much decimated this past year and most people had like no income coming in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I definitely want to ask that question.
Yeah.
And then I will get back to you today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any other questions, guys? Any other I'm missing? Okay.
Are you going to cover how the for sole proprietors and self-employed, are you going to be covering how that's calculated for eligibility? Or
yeah, so the eligibility for the sole proprietor is going to be based off of your individual tax return and then your bank statements for 2019 and 2020.
Gotcha.
So you're going to want to pick a quarter and you will be comparing them between there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. The only other two recent changes were previously with PPP, if you had student loans outstanding and they were in deferment or forbearance, you did not qualify. That stipulation has been removed. So that will no longer disqualify you from receiving a PPP loan. And it also made immigrant-owned small businesses eligible. So you can apply using an I-10 instead of a social security number. Let's see. So going over specifically, what does the PPP do, right? It is a forgivable loan. What we talked about, collecting your documents, making sure that you keep your receipts of what you spent the funds for, right? The loan is completely forgivable as long as 60% of what you use the funds for is spent on payroll. The other 40% can be spent on qualified business expenses. So that could be your rent, your mortgage, your utilities. A lot of industries are having to buy a lot of PPE equipment in order to make their businesses safe. All of those things qualify. They actually did a recent addition for this latest round to qualify individuals that were affected by the riots that happened downtown. Using those funds for repairing those businesses also qualified. The forgiveness process has begun for some borrowers. The SBA has had about $5.2 million in loans submitted for forgiveness. A third of those have already been approved and about a 99% rate for forgiveness. So these PPP loans are really designed to get you back on your feet with as few stipulations as possible. We're really, I don't know if you've ever experienced an actual SBA loan. There's a lot that goes into it. PPP is really designed to make that process easier for you. There are no personal guarantees or collaterals that are required. There are some people who ask, if I get a PPP loan and I just need to use it on something for myself, how does that work for me? That portion is unforgiving. What happens is that becomes a loan at 1% interest rate. And your repayment for that portion is 5 years. So it becomes a 5-year loan at 1%, which still is not very bad compared to a regular loan. So it's still not designed to not really admonish you for not using the funds exactly for what it's intended to be. For unforgiving loans, that payment period actually kicks in 10 months after your covered period. So after the PPP window ends, 10 months is when you'll start to see your payments start. And the only other qualifications, aside from what we talked about for sole proprietors, for a partnership, an LLC, or a corporation, is you're going to be using the income on your Schedule C from your business tax returns, or you can also use your W-3. And then if you have more questions about that on an individual basis, you can feel free to reach out to me and I can help you out with that. The next one is EIDL. What does EIDL do? Well, it's a fixed rate loan that's not forgivable. The standard interest rate is 3.5%. It is 2.5% if you're not for profit. That is a 30-year loan. It doesn't have any prepayment fees. You can use the funds for anything related to your operating expenses. There is a collateral requirement if that loan exceeds $25,000. So just keep that in mind. You will need to secure that. Like I said, the EIDL Advance is no longer available. It was extremely popular when it came out, and unfortunately, the funds that were earmarked for it did not get reapproved. And how do you know EIDL is best for you versus PPP? I've actually directed some customers to EIDL versus PPP, and how you'll know if that's a better fit for you if you're a newer business. Keep in mind that PPP is going to be based on a loss of revenue from 2019 versus 2020. So if you were established anytime before June of 2019, you won't qualify. I'm sorry, anytime after June of 2019, you wouldn't qualify. There are some businesses that are long established, but unfortunately they pay their employees in cash only, and they don't record that information on their taxes. EIDL would be a better option for you because you would need to be able to show that income on your tax returns. The other option is if you're a sole proprietor that doesn't pay yourself. So you run a business as a sole proprietorship, but you don't really file, you're not really showing any income for yourself, and EIDL would be better. Any questions on that before I move on?
There's one in the chat here, Kyle. Can you receive PPP and EIDL?
You can receive both. I believe they deduct the EIDL amount from your PPP. Yeah.
Do you have any follow-up, Julie, with that?
No, well, I'm not sure that would work in my situation because I did receive an EIDL for 20,000, but the PPP would be much less than that, so it would not probably work, I imagine.
Yeah, like I said, it really depends. We could take a look. I can take a look, just complimentary, at your tax returns and your income, and do a quick analysis for you and see.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, even if sometimes it might make more sense to take the PPP funds to pay off a portion of the EIDL, since that
Right, that would be helpful.
And I'm sorry, Kyle, what did you say? What is the eligibility for EIDL? When would your business have to have been established in order to qualify for that?
There is not a set establishment date for EIDL. That's why it's sometimes better if you're a newer business versus PPP, where you actually need to show a difference in revenue over those years.
Okay. I'll wait till the end because they do have like a follow-up with that, but I think you'll probably cover some of the stuff. So I'll wait till the end to ask.
Okay. All
Thank
right. Sounds good. One thing that I've been doing with my rounds in the community and just different business owners that I know is talk about grants. Grants are definitely your way to go if you can find them and for them to be available. A lot of people ask, where can I find those resources? There's a lot of information out there. How can I kind of make this targeted a little bit? So I have done some research, and the 4 best places that I can advise would be Axion, Chicago. They are a not-for-profit organization, and they are really good about matching small businesses to grants designed specifically for their industry. So I do have a link here, but you could go to their website and search for coronavirus, and they will have those resources available. The other one is SBA. The SBA actually has grants as well. They are a little bit more limited, but they are available, and you can search them at sba.gov. The Illinois Department of Commerce actually has some microloans and micro grants that they offer to businesses that are specifically earmarked through the legislature. So that's something to look at. And then the Chicago Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Agency also has some small business relief grants that are available. So I will always recommend checking those 4 sources out. Each one of them, I can tell you, is going to have different requirements. They're going to have different types of documentation that they require. So if you do need any assistance with that, feel free to give me a call. I'd be happy to kind of walk you through that. All right. And last but not least, I just want to talk about First American Bank, the First American Way. We are your local bank. We have been in this community for over 20 years. The thing that I like most about First American is we are really empowered to be able to get out in our community and be able to do what's right for our clients. And so doing things like this, like these presentations and providing resources for things that exist outside of the bank, that's what I like to do. I like to be able to give my clients the resources that they need to be successful. And I think it's been very helpful in building long-term relationships, which is really what I'm all about. And I also will turn this over to Cynthia as well, who is our small business relationship officer, just to touch base a little bit of what she does.
Just to kind of piggyback on what Kyle was saying, we are a relationship bank. We actually go out to meet the clients and really get a chance to really sit down with them and determine really what their needs are. Instead of us, I think what makes us more unique, we're not a flavor of the day. So if it's a promo that we have and it's a mortgage promo or it's a checking promo, that's not what our intent is. Our intent is to go out and really understand what that customer need is and to really focus on that need and match a service, not a product, but match a service based on what that client need is. So I think that's what kind of makes us a little bit unique versus a lot of other banks, not putting down other banks, but I think that's what kind of makes us unique. And part of me taking this role, I have said, I want to know what our competitor is doing and what we can do differently to make sure that we are servicing our clients based on needs and really establishing those relationships. So that's what a client relationship officer is. My job is to really build a relationship with clients. And it's not saying we're going to get something right away, but they might have a question about their bank that they're with. Maybe it's hey, can you tell me, am I in the right checking account with them? And we okay to do that, be able to review that and say, you know, you're using services or you're paying for services that you really don't need. So our job is not to really go to a client and say the bank that you're with is doing a horrible job. It's more to really let them know that we are here, and if there is, you want us to take a second look, we're here to do that. But we're not there to down another bank, because I wouldn't want nobody down in First American Bank. So.
All right, and last but not least, if you have any questions aside from what you're going to ask here, I did include my contact information. You can feel free to call or text or email me directly, and I can do some research for you and get you an answer. But at this time, I would just want to open this up to more of a Q&A format and see if you guys have any questions for me.
There's a question in the chat box, Kyle. I applied for the EIDL loan in December on one of my businesses that was established in August 2020 and was denied based on the establishment date not qualifying. Did this change?
That is not something I'm certain of. Just because we don't provide the EIDL loans, those go directly through the SBA. I can do some research and get that answer for you though. If you want to just shoot me your contact information, I'll do some research today and get you an answer.
Thank you.
And then can I ask for that business, when were you incorporated or organized?
It says here in the box that it was August 2020.
Okay, is that when they applied or when they were established?
Established.
Established, okay.
And then another question, are you both located at the Western Avenue branch?
Yes.
We are, yes.
And
I travel around. So.
I have a question. So I get a lot of calls from people who are interested in opening a business in Beverly or Morgan Park, and one of the first questions they ask is, are there any grants available? So I know you listed, you know, some of the different sources for grants on one of the previous slides. I think like some of those City of Chicago ones were related specifically to COVID. But I typically just suggest that they, business owners, establish a relationship with a banker and with a bank and talk to them. Is it SBA loans? Is that pretty typical for new businesses to get an SBA loan? Or I don't feel completely knowledgeable about, you know, when I'm sending them to a bank, what they're gonna,
Sure.
like what they're gonna encounter or what they're gonna, you know, be asked.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. We are actually an SBA preferred lender. So I can say for most new businesses, if they're looking to purchase a property, we do usually go through the SBA just because they subsidize those loans. So their requirement is always going to be lower than what any bank is going to require. So we always go through them first. The process is not very difficult. They typically require just a one-page profile on each owner of the business itself, and then a business plan. There are actually some organizations out there. I think one of them that Cynthia actually works with is the Chicago Neighborhood Initiative, that is really good about being able to partner and help businesses create that plan, and then refer them back to the bank to actually submit it to the SBA. So that is definitely something that we do a lot of. So I would definitely recommend that they stop in and talk to us so we can get that process going with the SBA.
And what is the current interest rate on SBA loans, Kyle? Or does that change?
It does change. I would say for a new business, for purchase is probably somewhere around 5%
Okay.
for new business.
And one of the questions in the box is, are SBA loans easier to obtain for startup companies now in our first 6 months of payments still being covered?
So the SBA is actually getting ready to roll out a new program. We actually just found out about it last week. So they still haven't released it. They're kind of trickling in information, but what they're going to be doing is for their standard SBA loans, and that would apply to a startup business as well. There's going to be a $0 guarantee. So typically when you take out an SBA loan, there's a guarantee dollar amount that you would have to pay first. So in this case, they're going to have a $0 guarantee, and then they're also going to pay the first 3 months of the payment. So there's more to come on that. I will keep you posted as soon as I get some additional information. But we just found out about that one, so I'm super excited to see how that works.
Yeah, and if you want to share that when you get that, Kyle, I'll put it in, we can put it in our newsletters to send out to business owners.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really designed to, is it designed just to get the economy rolling and try to get people to open up new businesses?
It is, and it's also designed to help people who have not been able to qualify for EIDL or PPP. You know, you might just need a standard loan, and that guarantee fee up front is a hindrance to you. So that would be a good way to get the economy back in shape and get small businesses going. It's also going to encourage new businesses to kind of put their foot out there and go ahead with their idea. People who have been hesitant to apply because of initial costs.
So I just have one more quick question, and this is kind of specific to a person that I just talked to recently.
Sure.
That opened, well, he's not actually, the business isn't actually operating yet, but he has had his business license for some time and is trying to open the business, but he needs capital he needs to make some improvements in the actual storefront. So would he qualify for an EIDL loan based on that?
EIDL, I'm not sure.
Maybe I'll just tell him to come talk to you.
Yeah,
To come
an actual SBA loan for a startup business will probably be his best bet.
Okay.
Because he can submit a business plan of how he's actually going to generate revenue in the future, what type of improvements he's going to be making to the business, and when he thinks it's going to be operational. That's going to go a lot farther than an EIDL loan application that's really based off of, have you had a loss of revenue?
Right.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we did record this session and